is no difference between a borderline and a narcissist. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is a difference, but there ain't much. Real talk. Here's a good old boy to explain.
If you know someone who is a borderline and who has these characteristics, and if you've been around them very long, you realize these people can just wear you out. They're exasperating to deal with. And no matter how much you try to know them and understand them and give them some healthy and positive input and encouragement, you kind of get the feeling like enough is absolutely never enough. Now, when we talk about the borderline, there are many different ingredients that we're going to get into here. But first and foremost, the borderline is someone who lives with a dreaded fear of abandonment. They fear isolation. They fear being on the outside looking in. And actually, there's another strong element there, and that is they have what I would even call a disintegrated self-image. They look to others to provide them input about who they're going to be, because they don't have any kind of notion of who they want to be and where they want to go. They can intellectualize a little bit, but they're very, very emotionally driven, and they feed off of the people in front of them in a highly significant way. As we talk about borderlines, there's one very strong pattern that we tend to see, and it's what I refer to as the cling rage pattern. Borderlines want desperately to know that you love them, that you believe in them, that you're going to let them be on your team. And so they'll cling to you when they think that there's some sort of a positive reinforcement coming their way. Oh, you're such a nice person. I love being with you, and I just can't get enough of you. And so they can have this real strong need to be right there by your side, and they're so appreciative of it. And then if you say or do the slightest thing that might hint that that's not going to continue happening, then they go into a rage. What's wrong with you? I hate you. You're terrible. You're awful. And so they can go back and forth and back and forth. And there's not a whole lot of smooth middle ground in there. And one of the things that tends to happen is when you are dealing with that borderline, you constantly have this feeling of walking on eggshells. It's like, I don't know what's going to set them off this time, but something will. I mean, it can be something as simple as you using the wrong inflection in your tone of voice, or if you have plans with someone else, then that person's jealousy can come along. And I thought I was number one, that kind of thing. And so they can cling to you, they can rage, and then they go back to the clinging, and they can rage. And then this is part of another very strong element that's on the inside of the narcissist, and that is they tend to idealize people. Oh, this person is the most wonderful person I've ever met. Nobody has understood me more than you. And so they can have a real high and lofty view of you, only to later think they start demonizing you. You're the worst person I've ever known. You're awful. You're terrible. And so they have these wide mood swings. And as a result, there's just they're known for having a general ongoing sense of emotional instability. They feel frantic very commonly as they are wondering, where do I stand with people and what do you think? They create tons of drama, and that's what I mean when I say they can absolutely wear you out. Now, many times when they're in that rage mode, they can have very, very strong anger, and it can be very intense, and there can just be this vitriolic kind of reaction to you, and sometimes it can just come out of nowhere. I've heard many stories about someone saying, I spoke about a topic and I had no idea that it was going to offend that person, and they just went home crying and they just hate me now. And it may be something simple like saying, I never was fond of ballet, and that person used to be in ballet, something like that. These individuals have a sense of desperation. I've got to be known. I've got to be understood. I have to be on your inside circle. Many times people who have the borderline personality will go into self-destructive behaviors. They have such a stark all or nothing, black or white way of thinking that, when they're over here in the life is a wonderful thing, then they just will think that you're an angel. But then if they're over here in their rage, it's like, you know what? I don't care about life. I don't care about anything. Now, they can go into alcohol or drug abuse. They can just go into promiscuity, like, I don't care what happens. I'll just use anybody that comes along. They can have a lot of impulsivity just in the ways that they do their life. They can have eating disorder problems. They can overeat or undereat. And then sometimes they'll go into self-harm, like cutting or playing with fire and things of that nature. They can make suicidal threats. I mean, when I say they're exaggerated, I mean they're exaggerated. And they have a chronic need for reassurance. And yet when you do give them reassurance, they have a deep distrust in other individuals. When they have a joy, they're super happy. When they have a sorrow, they're super sad. They may try to let you think that they're very deep thinkers because they feel extremely deeply, but feeling deeply and thinking deeply are two different kinds of things, but you can't necessarily say that. And frankly, if you tell them that, then they get mad at you for that. With the borderline, enough is never enough. And so they're never satisfied, and they have a long string of broken relationships or job changes, and they can have a lot of personal failures and strains and difficulties. Sometimes they go deep into the spiritual realm thinking that's where they're going to find it. Other times they say, I hate spiritual people and I hate God, and they have a lot of confusion regarding their core beliefs. They're truly difficult and mixed up people. Now, where this plays into the narcissism, you can see that based on this kind of exaggerated emotional reaction and response to you, these individuals have developed a very high need for control. Now, what they'll do is they'll complain about being controlled. You know, everybody's out there trying to tell me what to do, and they have their agenda, and yet their need for affirmation, their need for being inclusive can cause them to have such an insistent style that they don't necessarily see their own controlling agenda. They kind of give you the idea that you have to live inside their tight configurations of what they need. You have to be attuned to them. You have to understand them, and that's that strong control. Another element that's very strong in the narcissistic bent is their self-absorption is there to the max. Because they have such a low understanding of themselves and a low ability, they're constantly on search for who am I and what do I stand for and where do I fit with you. And because of that, there's hardly any room in their minds for thoughts about anyone other than themselves. And so that strong self-absorption then translates to low empathy. And this can be played out in simple kinds of ways. You may say to that person, I went and visited my relatives and we had a nice weekend visit. And the borderline might say something like, I hate being around my relatives. They're always just so negative. We weren't talking about your relatives. But you see, the borderline is so caught up in themselves, they don't hear what you say about who you are. It's always going to go back to themselves. And as a result, they tend to hijack conversations and make it all about them. Anytime they have a topic they want to talk about, it's really important. And you have to hear me. You have to know me. Another part of this that indicates narcissism is they can be highly manipulative. And that's part of that narcissistic bent. They can have a sense of entitlement. No, you owe me your respect, or you owe me acceptance. You owe me inclusion into your world. Even if you attempt to give them sympathy or agreement, it's never going to be good enough, and you're going to be punished. So you can see what I mean when I say that this is a very difficult topic, and this is a very difficult kind of personality to deal with, because the emotionality is so intense and so strong that anytime you attempt to talk sense into them, you just feel like not only are we not getting anywhere good, we're going backwards because it constantly turns into an argument.